Yeah, my Travel with Podcast today, I'm lucky to have Doug Brown. How are you today, Doug?
I'm awesome, thank you. And thank you for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. Doug, you're the CEO of Business Success Factors and an author of a terrific book, Win-Win Selling. I'll let you finish off the rest of that, but what exactly are you doing nowadays?
Well, I'm consulting mostly with companies and helping them do sales optimization and revenue expansion. So anything to do with increasing sales and optimizing all the processes around that.
Which comes in handy quite often. For me, like I've been in sales for 30 plus years, and I always tell people everybody's in sales to a certain extent.
Well, that's very true. There was a book called To Sell is Human by Dan Pink, which says that same thing, and I've always agreed to that. I mean, we're selling, whether we're selling something that people would consider traditional sales, we exchange money for value, but we're exchanging value for value even in our interpersonal relationships and all kinds of things, selling to our kids or having the kids sell to us or, whatever it might be.
To us too.
Yeah, oh gosh, yes. Children are the best salespeople in the world, from my view, as they don't have any filters. They're just, natural at it.
Exactly right. So how did you integrate the book, the Win-Win Selling book, with what you're doing in your company?
Yeah, so I wrote a book all on, it's called Win-Win Selling, Unlocking Your Power of Profitability by Resolving Objections, right? Because objections seem to be one of the big stall points for people. They don't know how to handle them without crushing them. And crushing them tends to break rapport, like trust and respect. And then usually the deal is not going to go, in the direction that people selling want. So, but I had a book idea. I wrote the book, and the book actually sat for about a year and a half. And then a friend of mine asked me, could she read the book? And so I sent her the digital copy. And she called me back in a couple of days and said, hey, I read your book. I think it's really great. Why haven't you released it? And I gave her, an objection, basically. Well, I'm just really busy, et cetera, et cetera. So then she started asking me questions, like, could you tell me why you wrote this book in the first place? And I said, I wanted to help people selling. I wanted to help people communicate better because that's what I do, as well as optimization and revenue expansion. Sure. And which is part of that. And so she then asked me a question. She said, oh, okay. And she asked me 2 or 3 more series of questions, and I was answering those questions. And then she asked me an additional question. She said, well, Doug, if you really, did you really write the book to help people? And I said, of course I did. And then she said, well, if you don't release the book to the general public, how are they going to know about it? And what I realized, Pete, was while we were going through this conversation, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's using some of the formulas that I have in the book.
Yeah.
And they're working on, yeah, exactly. So that's why I released the book, and then the book went to become an international bestseller, and it just kind of is progressing from there. But it's Win-Win Selling, Unlock the Power of Profitability by Resolving Objections by Doug Brown, and people can pick the book up at winwinsellingbook.com if they want to.
Okay, I'll make sure to put that on my website too.
Okay, thank you.
Put all the links out there so they can just click on it and go.
Awesome.
It's interesting because the reason you wrote your book is really similar to the reason why I started my podcast was, I tell my wife I want to help people. I want to, I like sharing my ideas. I like, coaching. I like doing that type of thing. And she's like, well, then why aren't you trying to reach more people? And I was like, oh.
It's a fair question. I agree with her, and the lady who was asking me the question too.
Well, go ahead, Doug.
No, I was going to say we ask those type of questions all the time in sales, right?
Yeah.
It's a tough question.
Well, it's interesting because I just had a guest on who initially said no to me, and she said, "No, I don't want to be in the limelight. It's not my thing." And literally, I want to say 4 to 6 months later, she reached out to me, sent me an email saying, I don't know if it's the opportunity still there, but I'd like to take you up on it. And I'm like, well, heck yeah. And so I said, what, if you don't mind me asking, what happened? She goes, she was mentoring teenage girls and telling them to get out of their comfort zone and telling them to be more what they could be. And they literally said to her, well, what are you doing? You know, to go out of your comfort zone. And she goes, I remember saying no to you. And I was like, oh my gosh, here I am giving advice and not taking it. So it's interesting how others can bring it out of you.
Yes. And in her case, children, right? So children are brutally honest. They don't filter most of the time. So, and they question things that adults sometimes are afraid to even question.
Yeah,
right?
like
so,
most adults would just say, "Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's great." Instead, the teenager's like, "Well, what are you doing?" You know,
exactly.
It's a show me state here, you know.
And the reason I bring that up, Pete, is because in the book I actually break down why objections happen, how they form from childhood all the way through. So it's like the psychology as well as the practical application of formulas and things of that nature. But understanding the why behind it has been very helpful to most people. That's what they've been commenting on, because they didn't realize that they're habituated through life, like this gal seemed to be. And she learned something early on where she developed a belief system and a value system that said, okay, I have to, believe this. And then she was called out by kids who don't have that filter, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting. I've had that happen with my kids as well. My children have called me out on things, and I'm like, oh, yeah. Right. I imagine you had that with yours as well.
Well, yeah. What gets worse, when it got worse was when they got older.
Yeah.
They both graduated college now for my girls, and so now they know there is no more BS. It's like they just go,
right.
You didn't do that. I'm like, oh shit, I can't use that. It's like when they're little, you kind of do some white lie fib in there.
That's funny.
So now with you setting up and helping all these people and companies, because you really your business tends to work with companies. You have to travel quite a bit, don't you? Or are you doing?
I do. I travel. Well, I do both. I try to do as much virtual as I can. But I am traveling a lot because part of the extension of what's come out of not only the book, but me having a background in supporting training companies, my business has actually started to morph and grow into a training business as well, where I'm doing it in groups. So I'm doing, for example, a live event in Canada in March, and then I'm doing one in Boston in September, and then it's speaking at different places and just traveling between that and for clients. But a lot of my clients, they don't really care to even have face-to-face time like they used to, years and years ago. I'm not gonna date you and me for our age, but back before the internet was available,
before virtual was possible.
Exactly. Virtual was an analog telephone back then, right? So. So I find a lot of them, they just don't want to go through the setup and the process and waiting and having to wait for somebody to come into their office. And some people like that, and I still do it, but a lot of them, just prefer to use video conferencing or something like that. It's much more efficient for them. They can do it from their home sometimes versus, when they haven't gone into their office. But I do travel quite a bit. I mean, I'm traveling. I've got to go to Canada, and then I'm going to Austin, and then from Austin to Savannah, and then from Savannah, Georgia, over to Indianapolis, and then Indianapolis back to New Hampshire. So that's all happening over the next. Yeah, that's all over the next 25 days or so.
What do you like about business travel, and what do you not like about it?
I like seeing new places and going to different places and meeting different people. I mean, even doing it virtually is nice, but there is that difference being in the same proximity of all other people, right? There's a human dynamic. So I love that because I love to communicate, and as we talked about, helping people. I also like to see new places and experience new, I'll call it even cultures, from different places And so I like that aspect. What I don't like about that, probably most of you guys say the same thing: airline travel, getting into security lines, having to deal with, the waits Sometimes you run into traffic issues, all of that. And sometimes that delays actually getting there on time. And that's the beautiful part about virtual. I have a couple of different internet connections in my location. So if one goes down, the other one's up. I actually have 3 of them. And so I'm usually always connected. But, I remember flying back from Florida one time, and I was trying to fly up north, and, tornadoes blew through in the Midwest, and it closed down Atlanta, which I got stuck in Atlanta overnight. So it was kind of like, myself and 20,000 other people trying to find hotel rooms at the last minute. And, it wasn't fun, but it is part of travel.
It is. I was in Kansas City and getting ready to fly out, and they had the tornado warning coming at 8, and my flight was at 7. So I'm like, man, I hope the storm stalls a little bit, and I hope my flight's on time.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, a lot of your guests travel probably even more than we do, and I have done like 4 cities in 3 days. So when I'm on that type of schedule, it's like one missed flight can just mess up the whole trip. Yeah. Especially if on the first day, you're late for the first one, the second one, or the third one. It's like that's not fun. Sometimes things get canceled, and for meetings due to delays, and sometimes it's weather, like you said, tornado blows, horn's going to go off. What are you going to do? You're stuck.
Nothing. Yeah, exactly. You're doing nothing. And that's the act of God. The negatives are, probably the worst thing that's happened to me with the delayed flight was my flight was so delayed going into Dallas from Denver that the rental car company that I had already paid for was now closed. So I had to Uber to my hotel room at 2 in the morning. Yep. And then I had to Uber back to the airport to get my rental car in the morning and be at work at 8 in the morning. And
it's a lot of fun, huh?
Yeah, my client didn't care, No. I mean, they were like, hey, that sucks. Hey, let's get to work.
And I remember this has happened to me twice, too, with rental car companies. I've showed up in the class of car that I wanted, they didn't have, right? So I reserved it. And one time they had a pickup truck for me. And it wasn't even like a nice pickup truck. It was like the utility type pickup truck. Yeah. Right. And I'm like, you literally want me to drive to the CEO's location in a pickup truck, right? So they're like, sorry, this is all we have. And then one other time they had another vehicle that, if I was 16 and a half trying to, cruise the beach to pick up girls, that would have been fine. But
Mustang or Camaro convertible.
It wasn't even as nice as that, but it was close. It was kind of the replica of trying to emulate that. I won't put down the car company, but it was just like I cannot do. Oh, and by the way, the color was insanely bright yellow and all that type of stuff. So yeah, it's fun sometimes traveling and running into those things, but sometimes it's horrifying.
Well, that can't work to your benefit. One time I flew into Bismarck, North Dakota, and it was a mix between rain and snow. And I was the only one checking in, getting a rental car that day, and the guy's like, have you ever been here before? I go, no, I'm heading over to Dickinson. I have to, it's like a 90-mile drive. He's like, I'm gonna upgrade you. And I'm like, okay, how much? He goes, no, like because we're not busy right now. I'm like, oh, great. He gave me an SUV, like the GMC Denali, brand new. It had like 400 miles on it.
Nice.
And I'm like, oh, I'm just going to keep this for a while.
Extend my trip.
Exactly. I drove down to Rapid City. I saw Mount Rushmore, and then came up through Sturgis, and then went to work in Dickinson.
Nice.
It was a nice drive. But yeah, in a 400-mile Denali, it was like, whew, I'm doing this. I'm finally doing this right.
That's awesome.
When you're traveling, what do you find? How do you fill up your time? Because like we just talked about delays or airport sits and all that. How do you fill up? So, are you watching podcasts? Are you doing work? Are you preparing for your meeting? Or are you just trying to zone out?
All of the above. I listen to a lot to Audible.com. type books. So I tend to study that way the best. So, even on airline flights, I may not watch a movie or even on a long one, right? I mean, sometimes I work. I wrote a speech, coming back from, I think it was England. So I came back from the UK. On the flight back, I wrote a speech. So there's different things that I do, but it's everything that you mentioned. And sometimes, when you're traveling a lot, the worst thing to do is not rest because, driver type personality people, they tend to just keep go, and through multiple time zones. And, traveling on most people takes out more energy than they think. So sometimes it's just important to rest. So when I recognize that, I just literally, rest.
That was my yesterday, Doug.
Yeah, was it?
I was in Denver for 8 days for sales meetings and work meetings, and then had clients come in for the last 3 days, and it was 15 degrees on Friday, which I know that's not super cold for some people, but for Californians, that's as cold as you'd ever want.
Super cold.
So I got home yesterday. I got home late Sunday night, and yesterday I was like, man, I'm tired. I worked 8 days straight, sleeping in hotels and odd beds, and eating out every night. It's like, okay, I'm gonna rest today. So,
well,
now my wife's saying get back to work.
Well, you can't stay down for long.
You had your day off. Now get some of this shit done.
So so you think about it in the terms of like bodybuilders. I used to know a fair amount of bodybuilders, and they used to all tell me the same thing. It's all about nutrition, and it's all about the rest because the muscles recover during the rest period far more than any other time frame. So a friend of mine one time said to me, he said, you're going to continue to burn out if you don't take some time. So like after events or after long periods of travel, I take a day off. I usually now fly in a day early if I'm going someplace that requires lengthy travel, especially to Europe, when I go to Europe, because there's such, there's a 6-hour time difference. Like I spoke in Poland and different places, and, taking an overnight flight.
It sounds good on paper.
Yeah.
So you get there and you're like, I don't know where I'm at.
Oh, I mean, the last time I flew internationally, where was I flying? I flew to England and then England to Germany. No, I flew to Germany and then Germany over to Poland again. And I flew first class because I wanted to sleep, but there were 3 people behind me who didn't want to sleep. One of them, I will not mention their name, is a lead singer for a very famous band. And they just wouldn't stop talking all throughout the thing, So it was like, but by the time I hit the ground in Germany, the flight was delayed, getting out. So I had about a 40-minute connection to go through security in Germany to get the next plane and all that stuff. And it was just a horror fest because I was so tired. Yeah. So, but I flew in a day early so I could recover. So that's the key that I've learned. When you can fly in early or when you can stay a day later, even though you might want to get home, sometimes it's or get home and take the day off, or at least, part of it if you can, and just rejuvenate.
I think, and I completely agree with you because I used to be the exact same. I used to want to get in Thursday night so I can start working Friday, then I'd work Saturday, and then I'd fly home Saturday night. Mm-hmm. And it just seemed like it was wearing me down. And now I'll try and come in early on Thursday, or I'll leave on Sunday even. And I think just mentally, it's like I know I'm not in a hurry. So now my body, I'm not in a hurry. Because when you, there are times when you have no choice. But if you have a choice and you can plan a little, an extra a half day, all of a sudden your body goes, okay, I'm not in a hurry now. And so your whole physiology just kind of relaxes a little bit.
Yeah, and the mind is and the mind's able to rest, right? A bit, or at least focus. I was joking with a friend of mine because, when we traveled together doing lots of events or seeing clients back to back, there's only so much, I said there's only so much green tea extract that we can drink to stay alert, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, so
all the 5-hour energy drinks are.
Oh, those things are, I used to drink a lot of them, and one day I woke up and realized, this is probably not that good for me to continue. I'm not trying to down 5-hour energy, but
no,
in moderation, right? Right.
Everything should be in moderation. But,
mm-hmm.
How do you balance, married, kids, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So how do you work it out with your wife about being gone? How do you balance your work life? I'm gonna be gone for 3 days.
I can make a joke and say she's happy, but so especially when because I made a conscious choice knowing I was going to travel we homeschooled our kids.
Right.
So I used to take them with me a lot of places, which was most of the time a blessing. Right, because it was kind of like they were getting an education and they were able to hang around, especially when I was in the training industry, doing work for large training companies. I got exposure to a lot of really cool things, and even some of the corporate clients. I mean, the children at that time got a great business education by traveling, and not just to travel, but they get to go to, different places and hang out with some of your clients, famous or semi-famous people. Or, so that was one way that I balanced it. And sometimes we would do, full family trips, and do that. And then what I would do is take a couple of days and go someplace fun and educational for the kids. So if I flew into, I don't know, we went to Austin one time and did a live event. And then once I was done with the live event, we flew to, you mentioned Kansas City. So the kids had never seen the Midwest.
Yeah.
So we got to hang out in Kansas City and took them, to Kansas and to Missouri, showed them where the split of the line is between Kansas City, just certain things like that. And, trips to, the Eiffel Tower, right, in Paris. So it's one thing I found reading it from a book. It's another thing when you could just bang on the side of the Eiffel Tower and look at it and go, geez,
it's real.
It's real.
Yeah.
Pretty, but it's metal. It's a hunk of metal, right? That's what the kid said. It was a hunk of metal. So,
they were right, I guess.
Yeah, it's true. So, now that they're older, my children about your children's age, they still travel with me from time to time, but they have lots of life's experiences and lots of stories.
I think that's all. For me, I mean, everyone's different, but I think I like traveling now so much because as a kid, we didn't travel a lot. My parents didn't have a lot of money, and they both worked their 9 to 5 jobs, and we went on a few vacations, but very, very rare because once I played football, and my sister did gymnastics, and so we couldn't, between both of our sports schedules, it was just difficult to get out and travel, and like I said, with money. So now when I get to travel, I'm like, I soak up everything. I want to go to museums. I want to see as much as I can because I never got to do that.
Yeah, and back when you and I were growing up at that age, I mean, it was pretty much jump into the family car and drive. It wasn't, it wasn't jump an airplane and go to 3 or 4 destinations conveniently because it just wasn't what we did. So it was either
It's so hard to explain it to I mean, you could tell people what it was like before you had your phone and your internet. But an international flight was you'd have to call a travel agent. Yes. And you would have to rely on them and their expertise, and you don't meet them. There's no reviews. There's no Yelp reviews on these people.
Nope.
Everything was, you go through the yellow pages to find them. And now it's like we're planning a trip. My wife and I are planning a trip to Japan, our first trip internationally in April. It's so, you get to go on the internet and you can do street views of the hotel, and you can see, you know what I mean? It's like, you can virtually be there to see. So when you get there, you're like, okay, yeah, that's the building I was expecting. You know what I mean?
I certainly do, because I just did this. I was in Charlotte, North Carolina. I rented a house for a week, and my daughters went with me. And so we got a 3-bedroom house, and I did exactly that because, I wanted to see what kind of neighborhood are we getting into.
Yeah.
so yeah.
I've looked at restaurants like in downtown LA or in San Francisco if I'm visiting, or Denver, like I was just at. And I can do the same thing. I'll go to the street view and go, okay, what are the landmarks, or what am I hoping to see, so I can see where the front doors of the either the office building, the parking garage, or whatever. You didn't get to do that back in the day.
No, people don't even know how to read maps anymore, right?
And you're still looking. I was just gonna say, you're usually looking down at the map to see if you're even close.
You got to remember the rule: right and up. Right, when you look at a map, right and up. But my kids are funny. Like, I remember when my youngest was, I think she was somewhere around 7 or 8 years old, and she had her iPhone, right? And so we were driving in Texas at the time down the highway, and she said to me, "Dad, how old were you before you got your first cell phone?" and I was thinking, I was like, wow, I got to remember this, right? And so I said, geez, I think I was 28. And she looked at me, Pete, like I was some relic that was in a museum somewhere. Like, what are you talking about? 28 years old, you got your first cell phone? What's the matter with you, right? And because she doesn't have any conception of not having the technology, which makes traveling a lot easier. Like you said, we can, see satellite views of places and things and get to know things before we go there. But I also think there was some, when we were traveling back then, trying to figure out where to go and how to get there on a map, getting lost and doing all the things that happened back then, or, making sure that you pre-plan the whole trip. A lot of that is kind of missed now because we take it, we just take it for granted that, if I want to fly to wherever, there's usually a flight going out this day or tomorrow. If I really need it, I'm going to pay a lot more for it. But if I wait, 14 to 21 days, it's usually reasonable.
I had a client, you'll think this is funny, Doug, because I had a client in San Diego who I go and see him. He owns a store now, a retail store. It's a family-owned business. And so we're talking. He goes, hey, are you heading back up north today? I go, yeah. I go, you're it for San Diego. He goes, hey, can you do me a favor? I go, yeah, what's up? He goes, can you take me to the airport? And I go, sure. I go, yeah, no problem. I go, what time's your flight? He goes, well, I haven't booked it yet because I wasn't sure if you're going to be able to take me. I'm like, excuse me?
Yep.
And he's like, well, I wasn't sure, so I didn't want to book it until I asked, but I'll book it when we're in the car. He literally booked a flight to Europe. Then we went to his house, got a bag. I'm like, what? That didn't happen back in the day.
No.
For one, you wouldn't be sitting in my car making an airline flight off point, using points.
Right, exactly.
To Europe.
Right.
You just didn't do that. So.
Nope. You could try it domestically, but that would somewhat work out. But definitely not. I mean, it's much more convenient in some ways to get transportation today because there's so many other options. You mentioned Uber earlier, or Lyft or whatever. Lyft doesn't exist.
Car services, the rental
yeah.
I mean, everything.
Yeah, car services, and then there's private companies now that, instead of me getting a pickup truck, I could call them and they chauffeur me there, right? So, that's.
Hey, the pickup truck would be a hit in some of my territories, so I don't know what you're complaining about.
Well, yeah, I've been to South Dakota and some other places like that, and I agree. I love pickup trucks. I actually own a pickup truck as well as other vehicles, but it's going to
a CEO, yeah.
Yeah, be a $1 billion company CEO and having to pick them up, it's not a good idea.
Exactly. There's time and place for everything.
Yes. So. Yeah. Well, that's marketing, I guess, right? Really.
Well, I've told my daughters this, and I'll share with you, is the negatives of having a phone with you 24/7 is, like, when I used to go to appointments, if I left here and I had a 2-hour flight or drive up to Santa Barbara, that 2 hours was mine.
Right.
There was no emails, there was no notifications, there was no emergency cell phone. I mean, I remember when I first got my pager, and I had to tell my office, I said, look, 911, if you need me to stop and get to a phone.
Right.
And a 411, if when I get to my appointment, to make sure to call.
Right.
Because it was like, I'd be driving up the 101 freeway here in LA, and I'd get a 911. I'm like, oh my God, I have to get off, find a payphone, which would be next to impossible nowadays. But I'd have to find a payphone at a gas station usually, then use my calling card to call my office, and then they would go, we figured it out.
Well, that just cost you $1.50 or maybe more to make that phone call, right? So.
Well, and then the 15 minutes to get off and find a payphone.
Yeah.
Now I've got to call my account because I don't have a cell phone. So now I've got to call my client saying I'm going to be a half hour, 20 to 30 minutes late because I had to stop and get a phone call that I needed to do anyways. Right,
assuming you could get back onto the highway in the same route you went, right?
Yeah, which I've done that too. Yeah, it's like, oh shit, there was no map app back then.
No, I've ended up. Do you remember the old map? It wasn't MapQuest, but it was. You used to buy a GPS box, basically, right?
Yeah, the Garmin.
Garmin, yeah. I remember one of those took me to an appointment on a dead-end street 40 minutes away from where I was supposed to be. So that was fun. In the middle of rush hour on top of that. So that was a blast. But yeah, I mean, I think travel is great, and technology has made it so much easier. And I think, there was certain nostalgia about doing it the older way, and planning out stops along the way and things like that. Just because you needed to, based on where you were going.
To me, it's kind of like the people that say 8-track. I remember when 8-track players were cool. You're like, but now I've got 1,500 songs on my phone right now.
Yes.
So yeah, the 8-track was romantic, but I still have 1,500 songs in my pocket.
What's funny is I still have friends that actually swear by old vinyl or 8-track or whatever, right? So I think they just like on the 8-track. You remember the 8-tracks used to skip tracks and you had to put like a match book underneath it to kind of hold the 8-track up to some of your younger listeners will be like, what are they talking about?
What are they talking about? Exactly.
You can look it up on the internet. You'll see it was a thing back then. So, but yeah. I mean, technology is great. It's made things a lot easier, and I'm grateful we have it. But as you said, sometimes technology, especially when you're traveling, can actually be a distraction and an energy drain as well.
Yep. You never shut off.
No, and I see people driving down highways in the middle of traffic, and they're texting. Just the other day, I passed. Somebody passed me, and there were two people in the vehicle. They were exceeding the speed limit by at least 30 miles an hour, and they were both texting. The driver and the passenger were both texting at the same time. I'm like, oh my gosh, right? So, it's not a good idea to take our eyes off the road, right? I mean, I hope our pilots in our airplanes don't do texting while they're trying to fly to places.
Well, until we all get Tesla self-driving cars, that's probably not a good idea.
I don't know about you, brother, but those things kind of, I don't know, driverless cars, unless they're in an amusement park, I don't know.
Have you driven next to one yet?
I have not driven next to one, and I have not been in one. And
I haven't been in one when it's self-driving mode. I've been in a Tesla, but not self-driving mode. But I'm here in LA, and I'm telling you, it's a weird, bizarre feeling driving next to somebody and their hands aren't on the wheel and they're like doing something else in the cars, and you're like, oh man, I think about how many split reactions you have to make as a human with things that happen.
Exactly, right? And you're completely one's completely out of control. Now one could argue, hey, look, the computer's a lot more acute driving, than, or aware, I should say, than human beings sometimes, because they're always constantly sensing things. I don't know. I mean, it's a debate. I mean, it's. I just, as I think we talked about before, I also have a software company. And, I talk to my developers quite a bit, and they're like, oh, I could hack into that thing, no problem. And I'm like, oh, no, we're just, right?
We don't do that.
So I can see myself going toward an edge of a cliff and off, because they're playing games.
Well, exactly. It's like, oh. No,
well, that could just be my silly fear too, but the reality is that, right now it's not for me, but maybe in the future it would be.
They're gonna have to get a lot better before I entrust me, or I have to get a lot older,
or see a lot less, right? You just kind of,
maybe it's a good thing for senior citizens.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know where they're going anyway. Sometimes
they could maintain their autonomy.
Yep.
But yet they're not responsible. See.
That's actually I can champion, because my mother is 86, I believe, this year, and she's having trouble seeing. That's why I brought up the seeing, because if my mom's listening to this, she'll hear this, and then I'll hear all about it. But the reality is that for some people they can't drive; they're impaired now, and so driverless vehicles might be a good way. They're mobile, they can still get into the vehicle, but they just can't see like they used to, or hear like they used to, et cetera. So it does get them around.
And in that case, the computer might actually make better decisions.
If I answer that one, and my mother's listening to this, but I would agree, yes.
In theory, you're saying.
Yes, in theory. And
sorry, Mom.
Yeah. Remember, Mom, it's Pete's show. So.
Yeah, it's my fault. I'll take the blame. Well, hey, Doug, I appreciate the time. I don't want to eat up too much more of your time. What's the best way for people to reach out to you, or follow you, or see what you got going on?
Well, they could either find me on LinkedIn at Doug Brown 1234. So I have an email address, DougBrown1234@gmail, which I use for LinkedIn. Well, they can send me a link. They could send me an email to Doug@businesssuccessfactors.com. Or, they can buy my book at winwinsellingbook.com, right? And then contact me. Oh, by the way, inside the book, Pete, I didn't tell you this, but for your listeners, inside the book, I actually have a digital video introductory objections course, which complements the book, which normally we sell for about $247 out of the book. But if you have the information inside the book, you can access that for free.
Awesome. So, and that's about $25 book or something like that?
Yeah, it's hardcover is $24.95, and the digital version I think is $14.95. But right now, I think they dropped the digital version down for a limited period of time, just for 99 cents. So if somebody's listening to this, it goes there. But I will say standard $14.95 and $24.95, right?
Yeah, I mean $25 is, it is what it is. It's a good deal.
Well, it's about 50 years of experience writing into this too. So not to seem arrogant to your audience, but what's in there works, and I've been teaching it for years. And it's a very different approach than the reason I wrote the book is because a lot of salespeople and people selling, their two biggest things that they have challenges with are number one and number two, and I think they're pretty equal. getting quality, qualified leads, right? So the prospecting aspect of it. And the second thing is, how do they handle objections without breaking rapport? And so I decided to tackle that problem because when I was looking, there are not many books out there that actually address the psychological aspect of all of this. They're just giving kind of routine things to say, if this person says this and that person, the selling should say that. Well, sometimes that works and many times it doesn't because they're not taking into consideration the psychological underpinnings of what caused that objection, which is usually some discomfort or fear. So they answer it with a routine phrase and then they just drive more fear into the situation. Unfortunately, the buyer is anchoring that fear to the seller at that point, and that's what's causing, a metaphorical arm lock, if you will, emotionally. So
totally, obviously I agree. I mean, it's interesting. I always enjoy hearing other people say the things I kind of live by. You know what I mean? It's like I have people. Well, you were being very overt about your and pridefully so about the success of your book. I just came back from Denver and I got the award for the most sales dollars of the year. So
good for you.
Yeah, I didn't get the best increase, and I didn't get salesperson of the year, and I went, those aren't the ones I want. I got most dollars. So
well, everybody has a different flavor of ice cream they tend to like, and I made it into category 1 and 2. In a couple of categories, I was like, geez, did those even exist? I didn't even know those existed, right? But I'm happy to have number 1 and number 2 in those as well as the ones I wanted. So so congratulations to you. Now I have a question. I'm going to put you on the spot. Are you doing anything to go celebrate that?
Yes and
good.
No. Japan. In April.
That is a great film.
And the new podcasting equipment I just purchased was a direct benefit of me having the most sales dollars in the company. So
there you go. So a tip: a lot of times people selling, they don't celebrate success. They just think it's kind of routine, right? When that's just kind of what I do. It's what I'm supposed to do. But what I found out, if we
go
ahead.
No, you go. You're the expert.
I was just gonna. Well, you're a selling expert too, as we both know. The reality is that the human brain, when we don't reward it, stops valuing what the accomplishments or minimizes the accomplishments that we have in the future. And I found even taking top performing salespeople or people who are not top performers at this point and celebrating the wins starts to build upon that confidence. It makes people want to do it more and more and more. So it's kind of a tip that I've utilized over time as well, and it does help.
I totally
and I used. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, but I was just talking to my boss, and I'm trying to tell him, I go, I'm in it for the money. I mean, if you stop paying me for my day job, I won't show up tomorrow.
Right.
So that kind of goes into the, I love my job. So I stop paying you, Anyways, but a lot of people don't do it for the financial reasons. So it's, they used to just give us a $200 gift card.
Yep.
That was our prize. And I'm like, no one wants to. That's not why you do it. So now they're giving us, in my industry, I get a really nice belt buckle, and in the Western industry, that means something.
Yeah.
And I was talking to the guy that makes them. Have you ever seen any of the rodeo belt buckles? Doug?
I'm not live. I've seen pictures of them.
The one he's going to make us, because the 3 sales reps that won the awards, they're like $3,000.
Yeah.
So next time you see a cowboy, you go, stupid hick. He's got a $1,000 pair of cowboy boots on. He's got a $3,000 buckle on. And you're like, okay.
I've never said that about a cowboy, and I don't ever intend. I some of those people on the rodeo are making some pretty heavy money. So, and, you know, some of the people that are riding around on horses were people like, how are they making their money? They're, you know, they got $100 million in the bank. So, you know, so.
Cattle ranchers trying to make good money.
Oh my gosh. You know, I had my wife's uncle actually owned a cattle ranch next to Ronald Reagan's ranch in California at one time. And when he died, the amount of money that was dispersed through her family was inspiring. So.
Very good word. Well, yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting. But I feel like I made a new friend, actually, Doug. So I really appreciate the time that we've spent on the phone. And anytime I can learn, it's a good day. So I want to say thanks for giving me your time.
Well, you're welcome. And remember, I've learned a lot from you, even in our previous conversation. So I shout out to your listeners that you're the real deal.
Appreciate that.
So
try to be.
So
I'll make sure to put all the links out there for you. And if you have any questions about starting your own podcast, please give me a shout. I'll give you all the advice I can.
I appreciate that, and I definitely will. And, you know, open invitation on my end. And certainly if you make it to East Coast, let me know, will you? Especially if you get up around Boston, because I'm not too far from it.
I'll tell you, I'm planning to get there September, October, whenever the leaves change. This year, that's my goal, is to get up there.
Well, here's the cool thing. If you come up any time in September, early October, or whatever, I can help you plan out exactly what to do and where to go, because I know that place like the back of my hand. So.
Well, you better be sincere, because I will absolutely hit you up.
I absolutely can tell you all the spots to go to, and the ones that people say you should go to and why you shouldn't go to them. I can give you the reasons why, right? So,
perfect.
So yeah, I mean, I've been here for over 50 years, so I know the area.
Yeah, because I want to hit Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Delaware. I want to hit that whole northeast corner there. It's like 6 states I want to get into.
So the late September is better than mid-October, depending on the year, because the trees will change depending on the weather, and a 2-week period could be the difference between missing peak season and not missing peak foliage season. So when you get close to that, let me know, and I can let you know what's going on. And but yeah, I mean, if you're coming into Boston and that whole area, all the way up through Maine, Vermont, where, you know, depending on where you want to go, maybe you want to go to Ben and Jerry's, ice cream place up there in Vermont, or, you know, you want to see certain things in Maine. I've been all around this area for a long time, so I can recommend some things.
Hit you up, because one of my goals is to see all 50 states.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty good on the West Coast from about Illinois over. But I haven't been up to that Northeast. I've been to Maryland. I've been to New York. I've been in New Jersey, but I haven't been up to that Northeast quadrant.
Well, come on up. That's a great time of year to do it.
That's what I figured. I was just thinking about that yesterday, going, okay, this is the year I'm going to go make it happen. So.
Well, I'm supposed to do, we haven't set a date yet, but I'm supposed to do a live training event in Boston somewhere in September. So I'll give you the date, and maybe you can come and write it off.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Do you ever do anything out on the West Coast?
I do. I've had some clients out there. Culver City was my last one.
That's 20 minutes away from me.
Yeah. So I mean, I do have some clients, and as I start, this is starting to grow out on the training side. I'm starting to get more and more, worldwide, as well as West Coast and things of that nature. So yeah, I think it'll definitely be happening. And I've done quite a bit of work in California.
I'll give you the nickel tour if you come out.
I would love you to do that, so thank you.
Yeah.
So cool.
Well, thanks, Doug.
All right, brother.
We'll be talking more. So
I appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
And
have a great week, and enjoy your flying over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. Well, I'm in Canada tomorrow, so.
Well, take a jacket.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, Pete. See you later.
Thanks, Doug. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye now.